Happy Victory Tuesday, Rams fans. Your Rams are officially 2-0 after a gutsy performance by Bennett and company over the Chargers on Saturday. Today, we're going to be talking about that performance, a little bit on who might make that 53-man roster with some of those bubble spot guys, as well as Matthew Stafford and quarterback room talk here in Los Angeles, here on the First and Tuna podcast right after this sound of the game.
Stetson stands in, drills one, end zone. What a play.
Hello.
From the mailman.
Welcome to the NFL, Drew.
That call was, of course, from the great J.B. Long, featuring Mina Kimes as well in the booth. The Stetson Bennett, the True Edwards, last-second touchdown to win over the Chargers. That was incredible. That was television. That's all you can ask for. Definitely out of a preseason game. Man, that was exciting. Well, hey everyone. Welcome back to the First and Tuna podcast, to our weekly show. We're going to break down a little bit of a recap from our 6 observations. If you don't know by now, if you're new here, I'm Tuna. We independently cover the Rams, and if you need to follow us on social media or check out our articles on Substack, everything's down at the bottom of the screen right here. I love you for subscribing and just hanging out with us and chatting Rams. For those of you that do follow us on everything that we do, it's a little bit of a big week. Some announcements a little bit later today, which is Tuesday the 19th. We're actually going to be hopping on the LAFB Network podcast as well to hang out with the Ryans and chat a little bit. Matthew Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo. We're also going to be collaborating with J.K. Bogan as well, so look out for that on his channel later this week. Like I said at the top of the show, man, we're going to be talking a recap of the Chargers game by way of 6 observations that we took away from there. But first, let's dive back into Matthew Stafford. If you were tuned into yesterday's episode, there was a little quick emergency episode that we did just on the Matthew Stafford update. He returned to practice on Monday. He was a full participant. The only thing that Rams fans aren't really going to get out of this whole part of the Matthew Stafford injury saga is a clear, definitive answer on, hey, he's ready for week 1, right? You're not going to get that. Like, you're really not going to get it from McVay. I think, in part, he learned his lesson with this injury specifically, that you're not going to get him to say, yes, he's absolutely ready to go. We have zero concerns. Like, no setbacks. I can tell the future. We're good for the next 18 weeks of football play. We're not going to get that. And you shouldn't get that. Honestly, the NFL, so, like, sports media in general, like, where we get so much information that we want it, and when we can't have it, we get mad. Like, myself included. Like, I want to know for sure, right? I want to be able to tell you guys exactly what's going to happen. But we're not going to get that. We have to have a lot of trust in this organization. And I'm going to sound like a homer. I'm going to sound like I'm carrying a lot of water for McVay here, and I'm okay with that. Because it really is just the reality. There's a lot of doomers. There's a lot of doom and gloom. Especially over the weekend of, man, mentally preparing yourselves to hear the worst about Matthew Stafford. And a lot of you are forgetting, like, a lot of the really, really good things that this coaching staff, Matthew Stafford, and this team are, like, do on a yearly basis. Have to trust that they are doing actually the best they can, not just to have Matthew Stafford for week 1. Obviously, they want to. I think anyone who believes otherwise is doing mental gymnastics. They want him for week 1. And I see a lot of people online talking about, man, yeah, but what about a first hit? Yeah, but is he going to survive it? Duh. Do you don't think they're thinking about that? Do you think that really that Reggie and Sean McVay and the whole coaching staff is sitting here like, I didn't even think about Stafford getting hit. Wait, hold on. Stafford has to play past week 1? I didn't think about that. Like, come on. Let's be real. The best takes I have seen, though, this makes the most sense, honestly. If you think back to Peyton Manning's last few years, even that last year where, like, really limped his way into a Super Bowl behind that defense, there was a lot of precaution taken in the preseason. There's a lot of, like, slow, long, drawn out, getting acclimated back to the team. Even Dan Orlovsky on the Pat McAfee show yesterday was talking about they would designate a lot of the veteran guys to return to practice to start their season a little bit later because that team anticipated to be playing in January and February. Why risk an injury? Why go through all these steps? Like, hey, we need you here. Like, you're not going to treat them like a rookie. I mean, Matthew Stafford is not going to put himself in a situation to miss out on being the best version of himself on the field for his team come week 1 or week 2, whenever it's going to be. This team, I think what they're preparing for, I think it's a exercise in extreme caution. I know McVay has said that, but I think they're doing it even more so than what he's letting on because they want to play in February. Look at the past 2 years where they've done things by the status quo, by, outside of not playing starters in preseason. The last 2 seasons, a lot of guys have gotten hurt. They've gotten unfortunate with those injury bugs, and they had slow starts. So I think to combat that, I think they've exercised extreme caution, even more than what we're saying online, because what's the worst that happens? You start Jimmy G, and you go, 2-2 the first 4 weeks? You go 1-0 the first week? They've started worse. At least this time, let's start healthy. So that's just what I think on it. I think we need to kind of reel it back in assuming the worst out of this coaching staff, because every time we tend to do that the last few years, things end up working out okay. Because this team wants to win. Ultimately, they're going to do what it takes to win, and they've proven that over and over. I'm comfortable being, the water carrier for McVay on this one. But enough Tuna yapping. Tuna, get to the main point of the episode. Our 6 observations that we took away from Rams Chargers on Saturday, starting with Stetson Bennett, man. First of all, cool nickname, the Mailman. If you don't know anything about that, quick rundown. When he was in high school, in a way to stand out when he was going to workouts, when he was going to passing clinics, he started wearing a USPS post mailman hat as a way to stand out. He had to do things like that because he was deemed a little bit undersized. I think he was under-recruited as well, but on his way eventually getting to Georgia. But that was his way of standing out, and people started calling him the mailman because, god damn, does he deliver. And he did. Honestly, nothing stopped the mailman from delivering on Saturday, rain, shine, or a Los Angeles Chargers defense. That last drive, 10-play, 75-yard, ending in a touchdown strike to True Edwards. He had multiple great throws on that drive. He had a 4th down throw to, I think it was Mark Redmond earlier on. He had another one, obviously the heave downfield to Brennan Presley, when he miraculously comes down with a jump ball. I have no idea. That photo on that makes 0 sense how he caught that ball. And then finally, the bullet to Edwards, who comes down with the ball in the end zone. This game felt really important to Bennett's development for the Rams. With the Matthew Stafford stuff going on, if he does have to take, a week off, week 2, or any kind of time at all, Bennett's going to be QB2. And Jimmy Garoppolo is also not a mobile guy. If something happens to him, the Rams' season is depending on Stetson Bennett. You really want to feel confident in your entire quarterback room. Bennett can play in the NFL, point blank, period. There's nothing else to say about it. I don't care about a situation, preseason, but he just checks every box. He's got the moxie, he's got the leadership, he has the arm strength. That rope he threw downfield, I believe it was to Mario Edwards. That was a line. That wasn't like he bombed it in the air. Like, it had no touch on it. That is arm strength. Holy shit. Yeah. But even in the context of preseason football, we see a drastic improvement of Bennett. Even his first touchdown to Konate Mumfield early in the game, that was against starters. There were some starters mixed in on that team for the Chargers. It was a no-look. When you look at the back of the end zone angle of it, he was looking off a defender with the flat. He throws a no-look to Konate. And ultimately, his timing in the pocket has improved since last season as well. He isn't forcing as many bad balls. I'm not saying he's perfect. There were a few forced throws. There were some errors in his throws as well. But his timing in the pocket has improved. Observation number 2. Smith followed up his week 1 outing with an equally productive week 2. We are talking about X-Man Xavier Smith. His development has been impressive. He is not just a special teams guy. He's not just a gadget type receiver where you feed him, a quick flat or a fly sweep and just let him use his athleticism and speed to get some yards. He's a well-rounded wide receiver, and he was not that well-rounded last year, and definitely not his rookie year coming off the practice squad. But to watch him through 2 weeks make multiple catches over the middle, my litmus test for a McVay offense on how much they trust you, on how much of the offense you know, and how much you know of the different positions. If a receiver fits in McVay's system, he's going to have the ability to make catches over the middle. This offense likes to challenge that 10 to 20 yard middle of the field in the way of post, digs, choice routes where you're sitting down in different zones between the linebackers and the safeties, because it's complicated. The receiver has to recognize the defense, has to make the right choice and when to gear down and do it with the proper timing. And then the quarterback has to recognize the receiver and trust the receiver to do that as well. And then pace himself into those windows and ultimately make a contested catch. Xavier Smith's highlight for me was a catch over the middle in that same fashion. Yeah, he's now done that through 2 weeks. I think he's done extremely well. He didn't play the whole game. Him and Mumfield both came out pretty early, which is really telling. But I think Xavier Smith is going to play a lot more snaps than maybe we anticipated before training camp and the preseason. Okay, this is where we start getting into some of that 53-man roster talk that everyone's starting to do. First one, I don't think there's any question that he's going to make the roster, but I think he's really making a case to be included a little bit more frequently in the rotation at the defensive line, and that's Deshaun Johnson. Sorry if I'm not saying the first name the right way, bro. But they do have some decisions to make at depth behind guys like Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner. We know those are going to be some of the starters in that rotation. But Johnson has shown excellent tape. Jimmy Youngblood online has some really good film on him. He's worked really, really well in the stunt game, which is going to be a staple of Chris Shula's defense. His grades, how we feel about PFF. We like them when they prove our points, but we hate them when they say something bad about a player we like. So Johnson has recorded a PFF grade of 78.2 overall, with 76.1 being his pass rush grade through 2 weeks of preseason play. He's played extremely well. His run defense has been at a 56.6, so could see some improvement there. Everything is contextualized, though. You do have to take PFF grades with a grain of salt, but overall they just kind of help build the base of, hey, has the player played well compared to his peers, or is he really struggling? It's more the former for Johnson, playing extremely well. He's been one of the best defenders quietly on the field for the Rams through 2 weeks of the preseason, with Braden Fisk coming back from injury, and with this defensive line being the identity of the defense and probably one of the most important keys to stay healthy, to stay active, and stay hungry through the long season and for a Super Bowl run, being comfortable in your depth. I think Brennan Jackson's also making good waves and is showing he can do really good things behind Byron Young. Deshaun Johnson, I think, is going to be really key on games where somebody's out for a few plays, needs a breather, for somebody gets hurt. I think Deshaun Johnson is ready to make a jump based on what we've seen through the preseason so far. I think he should be right behind Braden Fisk or Kobe Turner, wherever his strength lies there. Number 4 is another guy that I think should make this roster, and that's Sean Dolick. He's a fan favorite so far, undrafted free agent linebacker out of Buffalo. Go Bulls. He led the team with 7 total tackles, and he only really played the first half. This week was also Dolick's turn to wear the green dot. So now we've seen back-to-back weeks where Chris Shula has given a rookie linebacker the nod to wear the green dot. If you don't know what that means, it's literally a green sticker that designates who on either the offense or the defense has the communication radio with the play calling coach on their respective side of the ball. Last week it was Chris Pooh Paul Jr. This week is Sean Dolick, which is a lot of responsibility because not only do you have to be familiar with the plays and be a leader and call that play in the huddle, but you're also looked to as the guy pre-snap, making sure your defensive line is in alignment, help echo audible calls or changes from the defensive backfield as well. So really cool to see. He's quickly gaining a lot of trust with this coaching staff. I think where he's going to make his money, though, this year, at least to start the season, is on special teams. Sean Dolick is one of those players who you just put him on a field and he's a gamer. He's going to be around the ball and make sure tackles and be in the right spot. You want him on special teams at the very least. I know there's a lot of conversation. Are the Rams going to carry 4 or 5 linebackers on a week-by-week basis? Troy Reeder is there. They love his leadership. They love what he brings. Of course, that's why he's always on this roster year in and year out. My prediction, I do think, obviously, your starters are Nate Landman and Omar Spates. I think you put the rookies right behind them. I think you carry 4. I think there's something to be said of that youthful energy these guys are bringing. These guys aren't as raw as Omar Spates was last season. We saw a lot of good flashes. We think Spates is going to have a great year. At this point in time, I think both Dolick and Paul Jr. are a little bit further along in their development on field than where Spates was last year. So that those guys as your backups is a great improvement. I think if either one of them has to step in, I don't think there's a significant drop off in your run defense. And both of them are showing really good things in pass coverage as well. A lot of tight windows for opposing quarterbacks over the middle. Again, looking at these PFF grades, Dolek has been outstanding in his tackling and his run gap filling abilities. He's not just strafing run plays and just hoping to kind of be in the gap. He's constantly gaining ground upfield and putting offensive linemen in bad angles to not be able to block him properly. His PFF grade for tackling through 2 weeks is an 83.3. Again, what does that mean? To me, it translates that he's been getting better at putting himself in good positions to make tackles, and then when he gets his hands on somebody, he brings them down. Fifth observation is a little bit of a different one because special teams lives matter too. Ethan Evans has my preseason vote for a Pro Bowl season. So last week I made a comment that I swear one of Evans' punts went 90 yards, and I was not off by far. He has a long this preseason of 81 yards in a single punt. 81 yards. That ability to flip a field is stupid. Like, we knew he has a strong leg, and we're going to talk about what that translates to on the field for the coverage team. But holy shit, that's far. Not only is that, because obviously that translates into his yards per average, that helps out. But when you do look at his yards per average through 2 weeks compared to other punters, 6 full yards ahead of any other punter. He has 63.4 yards per attempt. The area of improvement, I'm assuming, is his hang time. So his hang time is not phenomenal. It's average. Right now it's 15th with 4.52 seconds per punt. The leader in the league has a hang time of about 4.92 seconds on average. That could be one of two reasons. Either one, that's just how he punts. He goes for depth rather than height. Or two, that can actually be part of the game plan with special teams coordinator Chase Blackburn. However, they decide, hey, this is how our punter punts. We can get a lot of distance on it. Sorry, Evans, you're going to sacrifice some of your average on those return yards because those guys are going to get some return yards. But we want that for our coverage. That could be part of the game plan. I don't know. The Rams have the opportunity to be field position bullies, that even if things are not going well on offense and maybe they're just not moving the ball like they want to against certain teams, you can keep the opposing team beyond the 50 and deep in their own red zone by just stout defense and then constantly punting them to the edges of the earth. So if that can happen, if Evans' accuracy has improved, he did have one drop inside the 5 last week against the Cowboys. Man, if he can do that like once every few weeks, this guy will be a Pro Bowler for the Rams. Observation number 6. This is about a coach. Interim head coach for the game, Aubrey Pleasant. We had this take last year. We were wrong. He stayed with the team. But I think he will be a head coach next season. I think regardless of it being preseason or not, it does take an incredible amount of leadership and coaching ability to keep a team fighting in a really weird circumstance where you're down at the end of a game, you're trying to make a comeback, you have mental errors, you give the ball up with less than 2 minutes, you get the ball back with less than 2 minutes, and then that young team led by your QB3 goes down the field for a game-winning touchdown. That speaks volumes of the internal coaching development of the Los Angeles Rams. It's not easy to run a 2-minute offense, let alone with backups and rookies and undrafted rookies. But overall, if you go back and look at that operation of that 2-minute drill, it was organized. Nobody was like freaking out. There was no panic. It felt like a Rams team. It didn't feel like, oh, we're just watching the backups. Like, no, this is a Rams team, and Aubrey Pleasant did not lose. It did not get watered down, and it never does when Aubrey Pleasant coaches in these games. I think the only reason he wouldn't be a strong candidate is if he just doesn't put his name in a hat. Like, if he just doesn't like the situation, I could see him staying around for another year. But I think he's more than earned a chance to be a serious contender in a lot of different rooms around the league. I think on average there's always 4 to 6 at least different openings, it seems like these days, every single year. It would be a huge blow to the Rams organization. Of course, you never want to lose a leader like that. He deserves an opportunity. That's plain and simple. Sorry that's hurtful to some Rams fans. That's really all I got for you guys. Rams look good. I think they're going to be extremely good this season. Looking forward to this week's game against Cleveland, and look for us across the internet bugging other people's podcasts and talking more Rams football. As always, subscribe to our stuff. Love me because I love you. And as always, go Rams.